Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Before I begin, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you won't miss any of my future stories. I remember the first time Clara called me to say she had finally found the one. She was glowing even through the screen of my phone, her voice filled with excitement. Dad, his name is Victor Hensley. He's brilliant, he invests in cryptocurrency, and he's so different from anyone I've met before. I wanted to share in her joy, I really did. After all, Clara was my only daughter, and I had spent my life trying to give her the best. But something about the name, the way she said it with so much confidence, struck me as rehearsed, as though she had already prepared a script to convince me. I pushed the unease aside. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I said, trying to sound supportive. I'd love to meet him sometime. Weeks later, we set up a video call. Victor appeared beside Clara in a sharply tailored suit, even though it was a casual Saturday evening. His smile was wide, his arm wrapped around her shoulders possessively. He spoke smoothly, telling me how he had started in finance, how he was now one of the top investors in the city. He threw out words like blockchain, liquidity pools, and venture capital, as though to impress me. Clara kept nodding, her eyes filled with pride. But the more he talked, the less convinced I became. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. When I asked him about the risks of investing in volatile markets, he dodged the question with a joke. When I tried to pin down exactly what he did, his answers grew vague, slipping into grand promises instead of facts. That night, after the call ended, I sat alone in my kitchen in Brooklyn, staring at my cup of coffee that had long gone cold. My instincts honed from years of running a small construction business, and dealing with people of all kinds told me something wasn't right. I had seen men like Victor before, all charm and flash, but hollow underneath. The next day, I began searching. At first, I typed his name into Google, expecting to find articles celebrating his success. What I found instead made my stomach clench. There were scattered mentions of lawsuits, mostly buried in financial news archives. Victor Hensley had been accused of misleading investors in a startup scheme. Another article mentioned a broken engagement with a woman who claimed she lost her savings after trusting him with her money. The more I dug, the more the pattern emerged. Women dazzled by his charm, families who believed his promises, and then ruin. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. My heart ached because Clara didn't deserve this. She deserved love, stability, a man who valued her for who she was, not one who saw her as a pawn in his game. But I couldn't just rush in and tell her what I'd found. Clara had always been strong-willed, and ever since her mother died, we had been close, but also prone to clashes when it came to her choices. If I accused Victor too quickly, she might see it as jealousy or worse, as an attempt to control her happiness. So, I decided to be careful. I kept digging. I tracked down one of the women mentioned in an article, a nurse named Danielle who lived 2 states away. To my surprise, she agreed to speak with me. Her voice shook as she recounted how Victor had promised to help her invest in a crypto fund, only for her to lose nearly $50,000. He knows how to make you feel like you're the most important person in his world, she said bitterly. Until the money runs out. I felt a chill run through me. This wasn't just speculation. This was a pattern. I gathered as much evidence as I could, screenshots of articles, legal documents, even testimonials from others who had crossed paths with him. Armed with this, I finally sat Clara down during one of her visits home. She looked radiant, more in love than ever, and that made it even harder. Sweetheart. I began gently, sliding the folder across the table. I need you to look at this. She frowned, her fingers hesitating before flipping through the pages. With each one, her expression hardened, not at Victor, but at me. Dad, this is ridiculous, she snapped, pushing the papers back toward me. You don't know him like I do. People make mistakes in the past. It doesn't mean he's the same person now. Clara, I've spoken to people. He's hurt them, taken from them. I'm afraid he's... Stop, she interrupted, her eyes flashing with anger. You just don't want me to be happy. Ever since Mom passed, you've been overprotective, and now you're trying to sabotage the one good thing in my life. Her words pierced me deeper than she knew. I sat back, defeated, realizing I had lost her trust. She chose to believe him over me. But even then I couldn't let go. A few weeks later, Clara called to say the wedding was being planned in San Francisco, where Victor had family. She sounded so happy, so certain, and I didn't want to crush that joy any more than I already had. Against my better judgment, I offered to help with expenses. I wrote a check for $50,000 not because I believed in Victor, but because I wanted to protect my daughter, to ensure she didn't face shame if he suddenly disappeared. Still in my heart the dread never left. I lay awake at night imagining her walking down the aisle into a life of lies. I prayed I was wrong, that somehow Victor truly loved her. But every instinct told me the storm was coming. And I would have to face it head-on, even if it meant standing alone. When the day of the wedding arrived, I boarded a flight to San Francisco with my heart pounding against my chest like a drum. I had been up the night before, staring at the ceiling of my Brooklyn apartment, imagining Clara walking down the aisle toward a man I couldn't trust. The $50,000 check I had written was still not cashed, but I knew Victor wouldn't wait long. I told myself that I had done my part, that I had at least bought Clara some protection. Still, the knot in my stomach refused to loosen. San Francisco greeted me with its sharp winds and crowded streets. I checked into a modest hotel not far from the venue, a sprawling estate rented out for luxury events. The next morning I dressed carefully, choosing a dark suit and tie, reminding myself that no matter how much pain I carried inside, I was still Clara's father, and I wanted to walk into her wedding with dignity. But nothing could have prepared me for what awaited me at the entrance. As I approached the estate, guests were milling about in gowns and tuxedos, photographers snapping away. And then I saw it mounted on an easel right by the entrance gate, framed in garish gold. My photo, my face frozen in a candid smile from years ago, now beneath a bold caption in crimson letters, "No entry." For a moment I thought I was hallucinating. My knees nearly gave way. My own daughter's wedding, and I had been reduced to a warning sign, like a criminal barred from stepping inside. Laughter rippled around me as guests stopped to stare. Some covered their mouths in shock, others whispered behind their hands. My throat tightened, my palms damp with sweat. I tried to breathe, but each inhale was sharp, painful. Clara had allowed this. Victor had orchestrated it, but Clara had gone along. The betrayal scorched me deeper than any wound I had ever carried. "Sir," a security guard stepped forward, his expression polite but firm. "I'm afraid you're not allowed inside. The bride and groom's instructions." My lips trembled. I wanted to argue, to shout, but the humiliation was already too heavy. I turned, walking away slowly, each step like dragging iron chains. I found a quiet bench down the street, out of sight, and buried my face in my hands. My daughter had exiled me on the most important day of her life. And yet, in that crushing moment, something inside me hardened. Victor's cruelty was clear. This was his final blow to break me, to sever me from Clara completely. But he had underestimated me. He had forgotten one thing: the check. I pulled out my phone, logged into my bank app, and with trembling fingers I canceled the payment. $50,000 gone from his reach. Victor thought he could shame me while taking my money. He was about to learn that I had teeth too. I remained nearby, waiting. Hours passed, the air filled with the distant sounds of music and laughter from the estate. But then slowly, the chaos began. Vendors marched out of the gates, their voices loud and angry. The florists shouted about unpaid bills. The catering staff carried trays back to their trucks, muttering under their breath. Guests started spilling out in confusion, their dresses dragging across the gravel as the party unraveled before their eyes. Finally, Clara appeared at the entrance, her gown a cascade of white silk, her face pale and stricken. I watched from a distance as she grabbed Victor's arm, her voice rising in desperation. "What's happening? Why are they leaving? Victor, what did you do?" Victor tried to hold his composure, but panic betrayed him. "It's a mistake, just a mix-up with the bank. Don't worry, Clara, I'll fix it." But the lies cracked under the pressure. Guests began whispering, some recognizing him from past scandals, others putting the pieces together. One of the vendors even shouted, "This man is a fraud. He promised payment in advance and now there's nothing." Clara's face collapsed in horror. I could see her lips trembling as she demanded, "Victor, tell me the truth. Right now." His mask slipped. "Clara, please just trust me. We'll get through this together." "No," she whispered, backing away. "You lied to me, didn't you? All of it, your wealth, your success. It was all a lie." I stepped closer, unable to stay hidden any longer. My voice carried through the chaos. "I tried to warn you, Clara. He's been doing this for years. You just didn't want to see it." Her eyes met mine, wide with devastation. Tears streaked down her cheeks, and for the first time, she didn't look angry at me, she looked broken. Victor's charm crumbled completely then. Surrounded by angry vendors and murmuring guests, he lashed out. "You old fool. You think you've won? You think ruining today changes anything? Clara still chose me." But even as he said it, Clara shook her head. Her veil trembled with the motion. "No, Victor. I didn't choose this. I didn't choose to marry a liar." She tore the engagement ring from her finger and hurled it at his chest. The crowd gasped, some even applauded. Victor, cornered and exposed, tried to storm away, but the police had already been called by one of the vendors. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. I stood rooted to the spot as officers approached, their questions sharp, their hands firm as they detained him. Clara turned back to me, her body shaking, her makeup smeared. For a moment, she just stared at me, torn between shame and longing. Finally, in a trembling voice, she said, "Dad, I don't know what to do." I walked toward her slowly, each step heavy with both pain and love. When I reached her, I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do anything right now," I murmured softly. "Just come home with me." Her sobs broke free then, and she collapsed against my chest, her arms clinging to me like a child again. Guests whispered, phones recorded, but I didn't care. All I cared about was the weight of my daughter in my arms, the fragile beating of her heart as she realized the truth. I had been humiliated, yes. Betrayed by my own child, yes. But in the end, Victor's downfall was inevitable, and Clara, my Clara, was beginning to see it. The wedding was over, but our story was far from finished. The hours after Victor's arrest were a blur of flashing police lights, murmuring guests, and Clara's sobs pressed against my chest. I held her tightly, feeling the fragility of her body trembling in my arms. The same girl who once ran down our Brooklyn street with scraped knees, the same girl who held my hand at her mother's funeral, was now a bride without a wedding, a woman crushed by betrayal. When the police car pulled away with Victor in the back seat, the crowd began to disperse. Some guests lingered awkwardly, whispering to each other, their curiosity overriding any sympathy. I shielded Clara as best as I could, guiding her into a waiting car. Neither of us spoke on the ride back to my hotel. Her head rested against the window, her makeup streaking down her cheeks, her hands trembling in her lap. I wanted to reach out, but I knew she needed space to process the shattering of her world. Back in my room, Clara collapsed onto the bed, still in her gown, her hair undone from the chaos. I sat beside her, waiting, listening to the sound of her uneven breathing. Finally, she whispered, "Dad, you were right." I closed my eyes, the words both healing and heartbreaking. "I never wanted to be right about this, Clara. I wanted him to be good for your sake. I prayed I was wrong." She turned her face toward me, her eyes swollen and red. "I thought you just didn't want me to be happy. I thought you were trying to control me like I was still a little girl." I reached for her hand. "No, sweetheart. I just wanted to protect you. That's all I've ever wanted. Maybe I didn't always know how to say it, but everything I did came from love." Her lips quivered as tears spilled again. She buried her face against my chest, her voice muffled. "I humiliated you. I let him put that sign out there. I let him turn me against you." I stroked her hair gently. "You were blinded by love. It happens. But you saw the truth in the end, and that's what matters." The following weeks were hard. Clara filed for annulment, though legally the marriage had never been completed because the ceremony collapsed before vows could be exchanged. The media picked up on Victor's arrest, linking him to several fraudulent schemes that spanned multiple states. More victims came forward, women, families, investors, all telling stories eerily similar to what I had discovered months earlier. His charm had fooled so many, but now, stripped of his mask, his empire of lies crumbled overnight. Clara refused to leave my side. She moved back into my Brooklyn apartment, trading her San Francisco penthouse for the small, familiar rooms where she had grown up. At first, she drifted through the days in silence, the weight of betrayal pressing down on her. I gave her space, cooking her meals, checking in gently, reminding her she wasn't alone. One evening, as we sat on the balcony overlooking the neighborhood lights, she spoke. "I don't even know who I am anymore, Dad. I built my life around him. I trusted him with everything." "You're still Clara," I told her softly. "The same strong, intelligent woman you've always been. He didn't take that from you. He just clouded it for a while." She looked at me, her eyes searching. "Do you forgive me? For everything? For what I let him do to you?" I smiled sadly. "There's nothing to forgive. You're my daughter. Love covers all of that." Slowly, Clara began to heal. She started volunteering at a local community center, helping young women who had been financially manipulated or emotionally abused by partners. Her pain became her fuel, and I watched with pride as she turned her scars into strength. She even began speaking publicly about her experience, warning others about the dangers of con artists who prey on trust and love. Victor, meanwhile, faced the full weight of justice. The court uncovered millions siphoned from unsuspecting victims. His sentence was heavy, and though Clara never attended the hearings, she followed the updates from a distance. One night, she admitted, "A part of me still hates him, not because I loved him, but because he made me doubt the one person who's always been there for me, you." Her words washed over me like a quiet balm. For all the humiliation I had endured, all the pain of seeing my daughter choose him over me, this acknowledgement was worth everything. Months passed, and the memory of that wedding day faded into the background of our lives, though the scar it left would never completely disappear. Clara eventually smiled again and laughed again. She redecorated her old room, filling it with books and sketches, pieces of herself she had abandoned during her time with Victor. And sometimes when I passed her door at night, I heard her humming softly like she used to as a child before drifting to sleep. One evening, she placed her hand over mine at the dinner table. "You saved me, Dad," she said simply. I squeezed her hand.
"No, Clara.
You saved yourself by opening your eyes. I just held the light until you were ready to see." And in that moment I realized that revenge had not come through anger or retaliation. It had come through truth, patience, and love. Victor had been exposed, justice had prevailed, but more importantly, my bond with my daughter had survived the storm. She was no longer the bride who had hung my photo with no entry beneath it. She was my Clara again, the girl who still carried pieces of her mother's spirit, the woman who had walked through fire and come out stronger. And as I watched her rebuild her life, I knew that the greatest victory wasn't in Victor's downfall, but in our healing.
Moral lesson.
In life, betrayal often comes from those we trust the most, and pain can disguise itself as love until the truth rips the veil away. But even in humiliation, there is strength in standing by what is right. I learned that protecting those you love sometimes means enduring their anger, their rejection, and their blindness. Yet patience reveals all lies collapse, and truth stands unshaken. If you are carrying the weight of betrayal, let this story remind you. Scars do not end you, they shape you. Healing is possible, and love, real love, is never wasted. Even when the world humiliates you, remember the greatest revenge is living in truth, walking in dignity, and holding on to love until justice finds its way. Thank you for watching this story. Please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends so they can learn from it, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. And drop your thoughts in the comments. What lesson did you take from Clara's journey? And how would you have handled Victor if you were in my shoes?